this one is going to be part one of the power of holding your peace is where we're going with this today. When Ruth sang, you know, the song, I lift my hands in total praise. You know, let us not forget that the word total means in each part, in every part coming together. And that's total praise. So my hope is that as we continue in this walk towards walking and keeping in step with the Spirit, because that's our goal, to keep in the good Galatians say, if you are led by the Spirit, and we say that we are led by the Spirit, then keep in step with the Spirit. And it's difficult to keep in step with the Spirit if I'm not present. If I don't know me, if I don't understand my thoughts, my feelings, the matters of my heart.
So you're saying if I keep in step with the Spirit, I get to know me?
No, what I'm saying is when you are led by the Spirit, you keep, the Bible says when you are led by the Spirit, if you are, then keep in step with that Spirit.
Okay.
That Spirit that is reigning within you, keep in step with that Spirit. That means I can actually get out of step with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I've learned over the years that the way to keep in step with the Spirit, it was when I missed the mark, when my foot was slipping, when I was much more unsure and younger, I can now see, because I know myself better. When I wasn't keeping in step with the Spirit, I thought I was. But sometimes you are shepherded by, we've been saying this week after week, it's what you're shepherded by. If you are led by the Spirit, if the Spirit is shepherding you. Well, how would I know whether the Spirit is shepherding? All I got to do is see where I am in the love is patient, love is kind. In that, or where am I in the fruit of the Spirit is love, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, self-control, faithfulness, and self-control. Where am I in those things? Am I keeping in step when the Spirit said, Jill, there's a response that you want to have to this, but the response that demonstrates that you are faithful to the Most High is not going to look like that.
And you have to constantly, continually go in and check yourself. Once I understood the fruit of the Spirit and understood that this was the way that I was going to have peace, I was going to be able to prosper, I was going to be able to grow and keep my family and my life in order. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Once I learned that those were the things, I have to come back and ask myself daily, sometimes hourly, are you in the Spirit, or are you in love? Are you in joy? Are you in faithfulness? Where are you at right now? Because if you choose to stay in that realm, then you will also receive the fruits of the Lord.
Absolutely. And we are told, if we are using this Bible as our guide, we are told to examine ourselves to see if we're in the faith. You know, and sometimes we don't do those checkups. When we did spiritual maturity, the spiritual maturity class, it was, well, you all don't know this, it was a 6-week class. And I may do it again online soon, but it was a 6-week class. But the purpose of the class was for us to take the time out and examine ourselves and to see if we were in the faith. Because sometimes if this happens to the rest of them, you can be in this thing for so long. Things change, you don't change. Your responses don't change, and you can easily just keep taking that same old attitude into and disposition into the next phase of your life. But the goal is it's like anything else. You don't do a checkup for maintenance. You do a checkup as a preventive measure, because you understand the importance of knowing what you don't know.
The word titration I learned when I started going through my medical challenges and the trials and everything. And titration is when you go in and you check what is the response of my system to the medication, to the supplements or whatever. And you are constantly keeping tabs on yourself so that you can have the knowledge of my body responds this way. My mind responds this way. My memory responds this way. My eyesight responds this way. My balance responds this way. And I have to take those things. And it was at one point when I took them, I just kept a little diary of just all the things that were happening. I took it at this time. By this time, I was falling asleep. And what I'm really doing is keeping in step with that current knowledge that will keep me alive. Mm-hmm. And when I keep in step, I write it down and I make sure, because sometimes you can forget, you get so many things happening, you can forget, wait a minute, I got to keep my focus on what matters first.
And all of what you said, that was so rich in terms of, if you could see that from the point of the Holy Spirit, you could see that from the point of God's desire to heal you. And he's saying your participation in your salvation in this deliverance process, that I promise you, but the part that you're going to have to play is you're going to have to be present.
And if I'm going to be healed, if I'm going to be healed by my caregiver, meaning the person who is taking care of me, meaning the person of God, if I'm going to be healed, then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to seek to be present, which means I cannot be haphazard like I was when I was several years younger. And when I say several, I'm talking 5, 6 years, 7 years younger. I have to say no, titration. Sit there and go through each thing so that by the time I sit here, one of the things we had happen is that by the time I took my supplements and everything on a Sunday morning, just to make sure I had all the right things to keep me in the state of presence, because there was anxieties and all these different things. I'm able to be present at this very moment because I chose to make God's purpose for my life more important to me than whatever else I was experiencing.
You know, like I said, this is so rich. I hope that those of you who are listening to this and who you are a witness to this titration, right? You are a witness. You just didn't know what you were looking at.
They watched me and you.
They watched you.
Right.
You watched us experience. You watched him sometimes look like he's falling. I look like nodding off. But all of that had to be done. And this is so good to me, Deron, because I think what happens to some of us, because we don't know what we're looking at and we don't understand what other people are doing for the betterment of something that you'll only know if you stick around long enough.
It was when I did the titration, an herb called ashwagandha, and I learned something. Because I took notes for that when I took it last year sometime. I said I don't want to be totally locked in to what do you call those pills? I forgot what they're called.
Some kind of anxiety pill?
Yeah, some kind of anxiety pill. I didn't want to be locked into that. And so I looked and found out that ashwagandha helped you fight anxiety. And it was a natural herb. And it was a Chinese herb that had been on the earth for thousands of years. And they were taken out way before a pharmacy was developed. And I had to take it. And when I took it, I felt better. But what I did not practice, which caused me to feel sleepy or something while we were talking, is I also didn't understand ashwagandha is going to make you feel sleepy. It's going to make you feel tired. It's going to make you feel really relaxed. And so I had to be careful with that. And which meant I had to go through some very disheartening situations, because Jill would reach over and touch me on my leg and be like, hey, and I'd be on my arm and I'd be like, hey, trying to pay attention, but I was not present. And then I was feeling messed up because I'm saying, this is not who I was. This is not the best part of me. But I realized that too is a part of the process where you're not understanding. You're learning to love yourself. You're learning to make important, what really matters. And you can't just go through the motions. You've got to be present through every talk, every supplement, every walk, every piece of exercise, whatever it is. You've got to make yourself present, and you just can't be on autopilot anymore. Okay.
But I want you to hear the big deal of how this fits into this message. See, it is that kind of growing in each other's space, other people not understanding, that causes some of us to quit, causes some of us to go back into hiding. For instance, people who loved, and we're going to get to how God deals with these family situations, but people who loved Saul, loved him, who only know what they could know, what they saw. Of course, they will call and say, maybe you should do this, and maybe he should do that. Even me, maybe you should do that. And I said, Jill, I have to go through this. I have to figure out, I have to let this situation play itself out. And the concern and the fear for me at one point is, what are they going to think who's watching when I can't, I'm not going to say all of what he just said today. I am just going to have to be shepherded by faith. I am going to have to believe that those people who hear from God can have the right kind of a passion that's necessary for a moment just like this, versus the tendency to be entertained, the tendency to feel good, the tendency for somebody to look and be, whether God is using them or not, what you think they are. So this is what all of what we're doing, the healing that God will bring our way, the healing that helps us see beyond our limited experiences. You know, other people, God uses other people to increase our capacity, to stretch us, to open us, to make us bigger, because now we get to look at another person and say, okay, I would have never said that, and I would have never saw that. But this is how God, when the word says God has a myriad, what is it called, manifold wisdom, so many ways for God to show you how to love. One of my stories for years was, I would, for a period of time, I would go into a restaurant and I would see a person dealing with a handicapped child. A handicapped child that was adult, but of course, because of the actual circumstances, was not functioning like an adult. And I watched those people sit there. I watched them not look embarrassed, not to me. I watched them enjoy their food. I watched them not stop and explain to everybody why their son or daughter, family member, loved one, I'm just going to say that, why they were the way they are. And what they didn't do any of that. They just lived. They just lived. And that thing rebuked me. And I remember saying or hearing clearly, I don't think I love that much.
I remember the restaurant we was in, and we saw that young man, and you were really struck by what they were able to do in these moments.
And that's when I knew. And that's when I knew. And that's when what's my point? There's so many ways for God to bring us out. If I'm not present, if I'm fighting it, if I didn't surrender right there in the restaurant where I really went to have a good time, I didn't come here. I came here to eat and have a good time. I didn't come here, God, for a rebuke or a life lesson. But I got one. I got one, and that one was how God began to turn my heart in so many different ways, and then exposed me to why I wasn't as free as these people in my mind. So this is where we're trying to go. Why? Because if Christ sets us free, we ought to live lives that are free indeed. And that's not necessarily our story. We easily get shepherded by something else, so I call it on the name of the Lord. I know I want out. I believe you know I want out. And as Eric said, let's let God. Let God do it. As Ruth said, listen, God, we want to come into this space with total praise.
What you have here is John 14:27.
Slide one, please.
14:27. And I'll let them put up slide one, and we'll read it together. Peace I leave with you. Peace I leave with you. My own peace I now give and bequeath to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Stop allowing yourselves to be agitated and disturbed, and do not permit yourselves to be fearful, intimidated, and cowardly and unsettled. That is so, bring that back here, please. That is so powerful to me, because here I am now, years later, 54 years old, after I first learned this scripture years ago, and I called myself living in it. But this is when you say, Jill, as you go through and as you grow, there are more things that God will reveal to us and show us what's going on. And when I read that, listen to what it's saying. It's so powerful. It says, do not let your hearts be troubled. So now they're saying when trouble comes your way, do not let your hearts be troubled. So you have the power to choose peace right now and not let your hearts be troubled.
But remember, this side says his peace. See, there's a peace we choose. Sometimes the peace we choose, right, is to avoid, to not show up, to not speak up, to hide. And we think that is peace. You know, meaning that pretending that something is not real is peace. And that may be peace out in your environment. Your family may feel peace because you didn't say anything, but I guarantee you that on the inside, there is an explosion waiting to happen. I know. I've had several of those explosions and ended up on the other side of not keeping in step with the spirit, but keeping in step with anger, keeping in step with frustration, keeping more in step with fearful intimidation, and being unsettled. And this is why love and forgiveness, who we talked about on Wednesday, there's no peace without forgiveness. There's no peace without promise. That's what this is. Jesus could say to them, stop allowing yourself to be agitated, because he knows what he exposed them to. He didn't give them a blank piece of paper and say, don't let yourself be agitated. No, he gave them promises here and there along the way. He let them see things. He showed them these things. Why? So that when the day came and they were actually going to go through, that they would have the power not to allow these things like fear and intimidation and being unsettled. That's just so disturbed inside that you're not making the best decisions for your life.
And so when it says, do not permit yourselves to be fearful, intimidated, and cowardly and unsettled, when I read that, I looked at it and I said, he's telling me, you have the power of choice right now. And if you allow choice, God's choices and presence to reign, then you have the ability to be able to not be afraid, not be disturbed, and not be unsettled, not be all over the place, not be overly anxious, not be unable to talk to your children or talk to your loved one because you can't handle your emotions. He says, do not allow that to be the situation. Go ahead.
And I was going to say, as we get ready to go to the next slide, Juan, you all, see, God has to show us this, all of this about harmony and with your brother. All of this is God showing us this is what it's going to mean to be family. And that's why he can say, if two of you agree on anything, you can ask me. He's saying that to people who were in disagreement. And he's saying, if you will become agreeable, if harmony became valuable to you, if your connection became bigger than your individual point, then you will then your prosperity would be the kind of prosperity that God brings. The word peace actually means prosperity and wholeness, as well as some other things. So, or the word shalom. So let's go to slide 2.
Family doesn't just happen.
No, it doesn't.
Keep going. Go ahead.
It just happens in the sense that people are born, but there are things we have to do in it. So let's read this. Family meetings, God style. The first one. Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead with Laban when Laban overtook him. And Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You deceived me, and you carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of tambourines and harps?" Because that's what they did in this culture when people went on long trips. Verse 28. He says, "You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing." I want you to take that down, please. What I want you to hear in this is what happens in family. Here, first and foremost, let's talk about Laban. Laban has already cheated Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
He was switching he's accusing him now.
Mm-hmm.
He was cheating him at first. Now he's coming at him like he's the honest guy being cheated. They're all real emotions.
What he's saying is, I'm in relationship with people who I thought were down and harmonious, but now they are, why are you cheating me? And he's appealing to them and their emotions and everything and say, why would you now cheat on me? Why would you run? Why would you sneak away? Why would you deceive me? Because he's now realizing this relationship is being challenged by circumstances that take place.
Absolutely. So what I want you to see, because this was family meetings, God style. See, in family meetings, God style, everybody just has to say it. And folks, we have to try not to take things personal. I always think about when Jesus was able to say to his disciples, "And I was going to come, I'm going to go through and you're going to scatter. You're going to leave me, but God is with me." It is hard to get to the God is with me if you take that too personal.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. I've been there. If you take someone else's doings too personally, it's hard to get to God's part of this, to the part of this that nobody can actually see. Everybody thinks that something is happening to them when actually God is in the midst doing something that neither one of these people see. They only know how they feel. And this is what happens. So I call this family meeting God style because this is about someone talking about something. Listen, didn't have the right to do it to somebody because he was the biggest cheater. Laban been cheating Jacob for years, 20 years according to Jacob that he served him. And Jacob understands all of these things that he's being accused of, he didn't do. See, I had to learn how to talk and how to maintain my position when folks were in the Laban disposition. They upset, they see it the way they see it. You know, Laban understood that Jacob left and Jacob didn't allow Laban to do some things that, some customary things when it comes to people leaving and children leaving and all those kind of things. But the bottom line is it was just a whole bunch of Laban not really being honest with himself and just going for it. Sometimes that happens in families. Sometimes, as we said, what Jesus said to his disciples, don't let yourself be fearful. Don't let yourself be intimidated when these things happen. Don't permit yourself to be unsettled and cowardly, because I have a say-so in this situation too. And I think you said last week, Deron, how the situation suggests so many things. This thing suggests that Laban thinks this and that about Jacob. And sometimes that's where we go. We'll go to slide 3 so I can bring it home.
I have the power to...
Let me bring it up. Give me a second.
I have the power to harm you, But last night, God of your father said to me, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long to return to your brother's house, father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob answered Laban, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Now you're part of a family. This is his father-in-law. Take that down. You're part of a family, and someone who's stronger than you, and know that they are. Mm-hmm. They have and Laban said, he said, I have the power to harm you. Now, but last night the God of your father said to me, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now, one thing that you can get from this is how God absolutely protects those who continue to be on mission with God. Because Jacob didn't just jump up and leave. He was there for 20 years. Jacob also had a dream, and it was time for him to do what he had to do, to go back and return to his family. And that's why Laban can say, you were longer to return to your father's house. All of this is part of God's promise. All of these things. But when two people are involved, they don't see that. But what did Jacob get to say? I was afraid. See, there's a lot of truth coming out right here. Jacob said, I was afraid. He asked him, why did you steal my God? My God. Jacob just answered why he was running, because he didn't steal the God. Rachel did. He just answered why he left. Jacob answered Laban, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force.
In family, there has to be times where you acknowledge your fear. And you acknowledge that behavior you witnessed, Jill, was because I was afraid. There were some things that were challenging me, and I didn't say anything to you. But here is when we use the word undisclosed. Here is the undisclosed feelings that I was having.
We would say full disclosure.
And we say full disclosure. And when we say full disclosure, I go ahead and say to you in the best manner I possibly can, this is what I was experiencing. But that attitude you heard from me had nothing to do with you.
So let's say that what Jacob revealed to Laban at that particular time is when I made that decision, I may have been led by God. At the end, God did speak to him, but he was also shepherded by fear. He just said, I was afraid. I was afraid, and it was that fear that you were going to do something to me by force. So you got all this conversation to mix. You got Laban talking to him in slide 3. You got Jacob talking to Laban, and then you got God talking to Laban saying, don't do anything. Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And this is where we wanted to kind of hone in on. And that is, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation, in communication with whomever. And that as you mature, there will come a time where you just hold your peace altogether. Because sometimes when we speak up, it's in fear, but sometimes it's flabbing, which sometimes comes as a sense of fear because somebody is trying to use falsehood to maintain a relationship.
And sometimes because I am titrating myself to make sure that I am in the presence of God, I have to understand that this falsehood or whatever it is that has entered into the conversation, I cannot allow myself to enter into that. I can't deal with that anymore because it ends the harmony that God desires.
Listen, and this is our individual work. You have to ask yourself. I'll use me as an example. There was a time when, especially right when Deron, when these challenges first came into our space. And I have a girlfriend who wakes up at 3 or 4 in the morning. So if I wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning, I can call her and we can talk. So I realized that, and I said this to Ron, in 2020 and 2021, we didn't talk as much. And I realized that it wasn't that there was any love lost. See, I was no longer allowing fear to shepherd me and then I go get on the car, find a meaningful distraction, get on the telephone with a friend who absolutely is going to more than likely tell me what I want to hear because I'm not in full disclosure with her. And even if I am, she could tell me that I want to hear. So sometimes, you know, you stop and you see, at least for me, that you want to be shepherded by faith. So neither good or bad. You know what that means to me? Just be still. And everybody be quiet for a minute. Everybody, Jill, don't recognize that your situations are making suggestions to you. And they're just suggestions.
There are times when I've over the years have learned how to be able to say, hold your peace. Do not allow yourself to make a comment in such a way that will influence the situation. Understand your influence power, understand your position in terms of who you are in these people's lives or this person's life, and you need to be quiet. Hold your peace. I told a friend yesterday, I said, you need to be hip, HYP. Hold your peace. You need to be able to hold your peace and choose to be silent. And listen, silent does not mean that I am now trying to get you back. I am now trying to shut you down. I am now throwing you shade, or I am now letting you know how upset I am with you. Sometimes you choose to be silent and say, God, I'm not going to say anything until you reveal to me what is supposed to be said or what is supposed to be done. And until then, what I want them to see in me, what I want Jill to see in me, what I want the brothers and the sisters that I work with to see in me is that I am willing to choose God. Even in the midst of this situation, one of the things I learned with my assistant Cabby at times when she was my assistant, and that was being able to say, no, Deron, make sure she hears that you are not being a bully, and being dogative or dogmatic, thank you, dogmatic in this thing, but allowing yourself to speak with love and be changed and not have tones of attitude, tones of being upset, tones of being betrayed, tones of I'm upset because you're sneaking around. It's not about that. You just need to leave it alone and let God show you what's going on.
Absolutely. And listen to, get the picture, get into the space of where Laban was. Laban had a lot of thoughts and a lot of accusations. And if we are honest with ourselves, by the time we have all this kind of chatter, we already think we know what's going on. We already think that, and we are so sure that somebody did something. And even when we quiet, we'll accuse them with our inner voice. And so there comes a time where I believe here God is saying, listen, at this point, you can't even trust yourself to say anything. I remember Deron and I was dating. This is about trusting yourself. Deron and I was dating, and I lived out in Montgomery County, and he was in this area. And after I worked in DC, I went home, and I got dressed so we can go hang out. And I was going to come back towards this way.
I drove all the way to Germantown.
No, that's not this story.
That's not that story. Okay, cool.
And we were supposed to go to someplace. Well, I'm talking about knowing yourself and trusting yourself and being true to that voice that you hear. Now, at this time, definitely I'm claiming a sense of not getting involved a certain way. So by the time I go in my closet and I see what I'm pulling out to wear, and I'm saying I just wanted to be his friend, and we were just two friends hanging out, and I put on this jumpsuit I had.
You can be my friend with that black and purple jumpsuit.
It was a black and purple jumpsuit. Woo! By the time I put that on and stood there and was honest about my motives. My motives was to hook him. But this is what I'm be quiet. Because you made me forget my thought. listen, but let me tell you what the Spirit said to me. Jill, whatever bait you put on that book, you're going to have to keep them with that bait. And it wasn't just my body that I'm talking about. Whether you buying people things, whatever you're doing, whatever you're using to catch them with, when you're no longer using that to catch them with that, then you might experience some turbulence in a relationship. So I called him up and said, I'm not feeling well. I'm not going to be able to go. I was feeling fine physically, but spiritually, there was something happening. So this is why it's important that you know yourself. It's important to know you're either good or bad. What are you going in the spirit in? What's shepherding you right now? What thought is leading you to do this? See, because by the time trouble came in our relationship, it was me, my person, that showed up enough that there was no diminishing to what I thought was valuable, friendship, who you are on the inside, in a relationship, because I didn't mix that all up with that stuff that I wanted to mix it up with. And I did. I wanted to. But guess what? You have the power. You have the power to let God. You have the power to be shepherded by the Spirit. You have the power to keep in step with that Spirit. But that power that you have is the Spirit of truth. And if you allow the Spirit of truth to reign, as Mimi say, and let go and give total praise to God and what's important to God, you can find yourself not in these situations, and you can find yourself, you'll hold your peace. What does that mean? Call them up, tell them you can't make it. Because you about to throw a whole bunch of somethings into the mix. And down the line, you don't see that right now.
One of those nights we went to Houston and you had that outfit on and you were sitting and we were down in DC, Georgetown. I knew at that point we have to end this going out or whatever is going on right now, because I'm going to cross over into a whole nother realm.
We had to pull back, but why am I telling you this? Because that pulling back meant that we could have some real conversation. Mm-hmm. This, I'm telling you, it could be with your children. It's just the principle of relationship. If you come in with trickery, then there's some true moments where you can't say I was afraid or I feel like you deceived me, because now it's hard to come right out and say how you feel, because you think, and I've dealt with women over this for years. Now you think if I say this and if I speak the truth, they're gonna leave me. Mm. They might abandon me, and then all of those thoughts and the chatter and the suggestions.
I've heard that for years. Women thinking that if they spoke the truth, they was gonna lose this or lose this situation. But I was like, you gotta talk, you gotta speak the truth.
Yeah, it got me is what I call it. It's a systematic conditioning that women have been put through, and it's hard to stand up and get past the names and the labels that you may be called or referred to on the front end, because we'll talk about that, because of change in cultural things, and just being able to be ushered in.
And I'll just say this, I just want to read this note, because this is the seed, this is a culture.
Slide forward.
This
is slide forward.
All right, go slide forward. The power of holding your peace. We have to own this culture season of change and major adjustments. Simply put, we live in an age of outrage. Everything expressing disappointment. If you think about it, you can bring that down. Right now, we're all living in an age of outrage and disappointment, and everyone, in one way or another, through social media, through TV, through email, you name it, is expressing their disappointment, their grievances, and everything, because things are not going as the way the American way said it should go.
And see, when things change, everything doesn't change. People still want, listen, we know we had 2020 and so many things changed, and there was still an outrage connected to an entitlement of folks who say, I feel like I shouldn't have to wear a mask, or this doesn't matter, or that certain things didn't matter, because there's so many things that had to change that would with the powers or the authorities or the experts wanted to say, this can just be a matter of time. Listen, let's all go through this together. See, this pandemic, it exposed that. It exposed that somewhere along the line, we don't believe that we affect each other as much as we really do. To the point where we don't see the importance of us understanding you can take one for the team. We got to go through this together. Because at this point, this is no epidemic, something that's happening locally or some situation in your household. This is global now, and we all have to think globally. And when those kind of seasons change, everybody don't want to change with it. And what do you get? Outrage, expressing disappointment. I'm telling you, I went out to get to a little nail shop up the street the other day. I said, boy, people been inside for a long time. Probably a good percentage of the women that I did see out had on top that look like bras. I'm not saying that they ain't got nothing to do with nobody's salvation. So no, I'm not a judge. I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you that folks been locked up for a long time, and everybody like this.
So you said they was just trying to get their sexy on? I'm
just saying they're glad to be outside.
Okay.
Glad to be outside. So it shows all of just the heaviness, the feelings, the disappointment, just all of those kind of feelings that came along with this particular cultural change. But what you said here is this: we have to own this cultural season of change and major adjustment. Simply put, we have to live in an age of outrage when everything is expressing disappointment. That's always. That's lady.
Can I say this? I wrote that based upon that Jacob scripture, and then understanding that everything seems like right now it's designed to capture your attention, to capture your affections. And every news show, every television show, everything is promoting the culture of non-accountability, the culture of I'll do what I do, I can suffer my own consequences, and I can handle this. And if we do not become focused to say, wait a minute, this is a season of change. By them changing at the CDC, this mass situation and all this, you've got to become settled in God. God, what do you want me or my family? How do you want us to respond? Because you got family members who are now at odds with each other over a mask or something.
Listen, whether it is Laban or this, wherever you are, you know what happens when a squeeze comes? What's on the inside comes out. Whatever's on the inside, if you squeeze a grape, you're going to get grape juice. If you squeeze an orange with an orange juice, squeeze a lemon, you're going to get lemon juice, right? Whatever you squeeze, whatever's on the inside is going to come out. And some of us, this is how our reveal has come. And what comes out is the expression, the essence of that thing, the disposition, the mindset. And so we go to this place just like Jacob, just like Laban, and you go through a season or go through the process of life where you just, things are squeezing you. And not only does what's in there come out, because it doesn't have to be expressed. It doesn't have to be expressed using words of fear or being shepherded by the spirit of fear or flattery or falsehood. We can choose. What are we going to do? What's a great example for me? Squeeze come. I see that I feel short-tempered. I feel irritated. I feel right then and there, all that I feel and I think, I can put in the light of the Spirit, be led by the Spirit, and then desire to keep the step with that Spirit. But my point to you is we can see the beauty of this situation. Because when the squeeze comes, you won't see the truth.
And you hold your peace to see the truth.
There it is right there.
You hold your peace to see the truth.
That's what Laban went through. He said, say nothing good or say nothing bad. Be quiet.
There was one time, a couple of times that Talita came over with my granddaughter, and Talita stood outside the door. She had just come from work, and she stood outside of our screen door that had the glass in it, and she didn't come in. And she says, I'm not coming in. And I had to hold my peace because I did not like what we were experiencing. She came over, but I could not have contact or anything.
So let me give them the context of this. She wasn't coming in because she's a pediatrician and she still had her scrubs on. So when she came over, if I was keeping my granddaughter, picked her up from school or from wherever I picked her up from, when her mother would come to pick her up, she would not come inside. Yes. So I want you to get a picture of the background.
And she took one for the family because that's not our norm, but we had to slip into that pattern of dealing with one another and dealing with others' family because we had to hold our peace and be hip to what was going on and accept things as they are. And listen, this is not because, I'm forget that. I'm sitting down with my family. You got to be careful.
Right. And our goal here is to say, with all this squeeze and all, how are you going to express yourself in this situation? What you just said, Ronnie, everything is expressing itself in disappointment. It's expressing itself in outrage. How are you going to express yourself? Because however I express myself, I determine my future. Now I have some power at my disposal. And I can decide. I can go with the suggestions of the situation, and the situation is suggesting that you're losing. The situation is suggesting that your family is falling apart. The situation is suggesting that somebody is blaming you. The situation is suggesting all of those things, just like it suggested it to Jacob. It's a lot of suggestion going on. But you and I have to decide, what am I going to do with all that's in the space? Because God is suggesting, truth is suggesting, and circumstances are suggesting. What expression? What am I going to manifest? Am I going to manifest the love of God in this situation? Am I going to manifest my limited love in my easily agitated disposition? But I get to choose.
And I'm not going to speak my truth. I'm speaking the truth. Not trying to speak my truth so I can be right or feel like I accomplished something in this conversation. I'm going to speak the truth and be able to talk about it the way it is. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Listen, everything on slide 2 that Laban said to Jacob was Laban's truth. It was all his truth. It wasn't the truth. The truth is that Rachel stole the God, the thing that he was looking for. But as far as Laban was concerned, everything he said and every accusation he had towards Jacob was true to him. And that's how we come into the room. Remember, this is about harmony. This is about peace. And that's how we come in the room. With my thoughts and feelings about a situation, his thoughts and feelings about the situation, and we continue to say, week after week, you got to bring God into these conversations. You got to let God tell you to hold your peace. And you have to trust that holding your peace doesn't mean that someone else is winning.
You got to be able to talk to yourself, minister to yourself, deal with your inner correction and all the different things that are going on. And you have to be able to say, I'm holding my peace and speaking truth, and understand that truth is a fire. Truth sometimes burns things because it's so accurate. It's so intense. And you've got to allow that truth to speak, but you don't take it personally because you're offended because they're offended or they're bothered. You have to sit back and watch it. And for me, I have to speak to myself and say, Deron, you're going to focus on the truth, and you're not going to open your mouth, and you're not going to cause. There were times that I could have made a situation go in another direction. And I said, I'm not doing it. And I had the power to do it. But I said, I'm not having this conversation. I'm not making this call to this authority figure in this person's name. I'm not doing that. God, you're going to have to let this authority figure know what needs to be done. But I'm not getting involved anymore because I can see it's getting a little messy. It's getting a little complicated now. And I'm out.
Remember this, because this is the go-to for me. All these things was happening to Jesus. His good friends, his close companions were about to leave him. And he says, you all about to leave me, but I'm not alone. See, until, and then he goes on to talk about how and when he talked to the Father, he said, I have finished, I have accomplished what you sent me to do until you value God's why and see it from God's point. And that every human being that has made it into this earth, born, is a seed planted for the purposes of light and love and restoration and God's gift to mankind. Every one of us, we are God's gift to humankind based on God's will and what his goal is. And until, like Jesus, you get to the place where what God is calling you to do, what the Holy Spirit is leading you to do, when keeping in step with that Spirit is bigger than who's leaving, who's staying. And you got to be honest about being afraid, or you'll be busting out like Jacob. You got to be honest about how it makes you feel, or you'll be shepherded by those feelings. Listen, feelings buried alive, don't die. Bury them alive. Don't come to terms.
Bury them alive.
If you feelings that are buried, they are alive. They're unsettled. They're still. It's like a live wire. If you have a live wire in the ground, even though it looks like it's in the dirt, if it is on and it is live, and you step on it, or it meets with water or whatever makes it destructive, guess what? You are going to experience that because it doesn't matter. What matters is you taking the power away from this thing by not allowing your heart to be troubled. That means you got to take the power away from something. What did Jesus take the power away from? Rejection. Rejection from human beings. He said, God's purpose for me being here is bigger than rejection from human beings. And that doesn't come overnight because we are human. But it is a choice to say, God, you are with me. I know my circumstances are suggesting some things, but you are with me. And I'm not talking, and that happens when you keep in step and you're no longer that sheep who takes wandering lightly. It's like missing school. Every time you miss a year in school, you stay back. You were late. Other people your age move forward. We have to see that missing classes matters. Not connecting, being disconnected for even a little while matters. Listen, we already know if oxygen doesn't get to the brain, it doesn't take 2 hours. If oxygen doesn't get to the brain, what happens? Your heart, you may still be breathing, but your brain dead. None of us want to be brain dead saints. We're breathing. Something has to help us to breathe, and all we care about is that we're still breathing. Oh, no. We care that we have the power to choose.
So what do we want them to understand?
We want them to understand, we were talking about holding your peace. We want them to understand the purpose of choice and power. And from this last piece of conversation is when you're in this situation, you're going to have all kinds of suggestions. You have choices because they're only suggestions. And that you choose God's way. But you desire so strongly to keep in step with the Spirit. That you get to know yourself well enough to know this is who I am when I'm not in step with the Spirit. This is how I speak when I'm not in step with the Spirit. This is what I do, Jill, when you are shepherded by fear. You call somebody in the middle of the night, instead of sitting with it and being quiet, you start talking about some other stuff, finding meaningful distractions. Jill, this is what you do. Examine yourself. This is what you do so that when you tell yourself that truth, and it can be a bit painful at that time to wait on God that way. But when you do that, you actually get to go through another door. Because guess what I stopped doing? I don't pick up that phone at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't do that anymore. And
our life has gone a lot better. I love your friends. But our life has gone a lot better because you check in with God in the morning. And as opposed to checking in with someone else and we have a conversation. You and I have our conversation in the morning about what you and your friend talk about for 45 minutes to an hour.
Which doesn't happen anymore.
Because
again, as long as you don't sit with the message that your feelings are indicators, and it's a message to you. It's a message from you to you. It's the truth, and it is that deep innermost thing that's in your inmost parts that is trying to tell you something about yourself. What did Jesus say to Peter at one point? Peter, you're going to deny me. Peter said, no, I'm not. No, I won't. When he told him about y'all going to leave me alone, Peter said, not me. Maybe the rest of these babblers, but not me. Jesus said, no, Peter. No. Before the rooster crows, you're not going to do it one time. You're going to do it 3 times. See, you can get to know now that same spirit that was that teacher that was outside of them is inside you now. Mm-hmm. And you can let that teacher tell you, no, you're not. No. You're not, nothing is going to change until you face this right here, Jill. Nothing is going to change. I know you think it will because you feel strongly about something. But I'm telling you the truth about what's really hidden beneath all of that other chatter that is buzzing your ears out. So let's go to slide number 5. When we talk about the power of holding your peace. Mm-hmm. You have to know that our expression means everything. Listen, read this with me. And the tongue is, in a sense, a fire. The very word of injustice and unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members as that which contaminates the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life, the cycle of man's existence, and is itself set on fire by hell. Mm-hmm. Let's take that. See, I think a couple of weeks ago, what we talked about is what you say. You are determining what you say and do. You are determining what you want your future to look like.
And what you put this note down here, is that you have to abstain from outrage and embrace peace. You have to stay away from being upset, being tremendously bothered, and you have to surrender to humility and peace. And when you were talking to your friends, sometimes it really upset me because I would say they don't have the right idea in mind while they're talking. They don't understand who they're talking to, what person, what responsibility you have. But God had challenged me to say, Deron, stop getting stupid upset over things. Abstain for that and choose peace. And in choosing peace, I don't have to allow myself to feel that way. And I never knew that this day would show up where I don't get upset over your friends or anything of that nature because I understand who God really is.
One of the things Ron said a minute ago was that you have to abstain from outrage. See, remember the word is outrage. It's not telling you to abstain from feeling anger or disappointment. You're not abstaining from feeling those things. You have to feel them to get to the root of something so that it can take you where maybe to a place within you that you didn't want to travel. Maybe at some point in your life you didn't feel safe enough to face that thing. You know, just some things we don't tell kids. But when they become adults, or get older, we see that they're mature enough to handle it. And so that's true about us. So he says that, you know, in dealing with this tongue issue, and it can contaminate the entire body and it sets on fire the course of our life.
Mm-hmm.
You can set your tongue in a way where it sets on fire the course of your life, where fire is a baptizer, where fire cleanses, or you can use your same tongue that will set its on fire the course of your life destructively. Either way, you can use your tongue as a way of cleansing, meaning the fire of the tongue, as a way of cleansing, like the Holy Spirit does, or it can destroy. Where we steal, choices, choose to embrace peace. What does that mean, Harmony?
And I literally have to sit back when you're saying that, Joe. I can see the moments where I said, "You are not going to say anything, Deron, in this situation, because you've been in these moments that you created a situation because you didn't fully understand or allow yourself to understand all of what's going on."
You know, absolutely. And if you don't see, and I don't see, that in all of this, God, the goal is that God is revealing his plans. He's revealing his plans to Jacob. Mm-hmm. Laban was a part of the family, but it doesn't mean God wasn't revealing his plans to Jacob. Mm-hmm. If you go and read Genesis 31, you'll see it. You'll going into those later verses, you will see that God was in the midst of all of this, and that's what we forget. Because sometimes it doesn't feel like that, and sometimes the appearance of things, I'm telling you, the appearance of things look a certain way, and you can constantly, what we call chatter throughout the couple of weeks, I'm going to call them suggestions. Because it starts with chatter, but then that fear chatter starts suggesting, why don't you do this? Why don't you go get another job? Why don't you quit your job? Mm-hmm. Why don't you go learn how to do this? And it'll start suggesting things, and not necessarily things that sound that is obviously destructive. It's not obviously destructive. It's destructive because it gets you distracted. It's destructive to who you would be, and you come into the best version of yourself. Why? Because you avoided something. So I want to move on from that. So we were talking about the expression. We're still talking about the power of holding your peace. Mm-hmm. Show restraint. Knowing how to deal with situations. So when we're dealing with this, we've been talking about. Let's go to slide 6. I'm going to go straight there. Go ahead. We're going to use the story of Job. Mm-hmm. Slide 6. Let's read it. This is Job 2:10, I believe. It says, "Why do you still hold on to integrity? Curse God and die." This is what Job's wife was saying to him. But he answered her, "You are talking like a low-class woman. Are we to receive the good at God's hands but reject the bad?" In all this, Job did not say one single word. Sinful word, worshiping in the face of deep pain. This right here, take that. This is the anchor of what we have to learn to do. Mm-hmm. We have to learn to worship in deep pain. There's so many things we do other than worship. And worship isn't just what you're saying at that moment. And worship is your response to life around you while you're going through. What did Jesus say? I was going to come. You all are going to leave me. But what's his worship? I'm not alone. So I'm going to behave like I know I'm not alone. I'm not going to say I'm not alone, but then behave in an outrage as if I believe that I'm being deserted and I'm alone.
And that meant what I had to do was remove my judgments, remove my predictions, remove my suspicions, remove all these different things, because I had to be present in the moment of now, not in the moment of my story of what I thought or holding on to my story. Sometimes, and I remember I told you this, Jill, in the last week or so, as we've been dealing with holding your peace, that a lot of times you have to be careful not to engage in certain activities and conversations. Go ahead.
Just like Jacob and Laban. If Laban was not told, I know you all get this, in the midst of how fired up Laban was, there's no way if he were to talk to Jacob that he was not going to speak from that hurt. The probability, this is the wire we continue to trip over. In the midst of hurt, in the midst of anger, at the height of some things, we want to work it out. I have to know you can't talk right now. You're going to defend yourself.
Meaning yourself, you can't talk.
Yeah, okay. I have to say to myself, Jill, you can't talk right now. But I'm back to what I keep telling you. You got to know yourself. You got to be honest with yourself. But what did I say? And what do you know? See, I fail at this enough times to say, God, I don't want to go there anymore.
And I
don't want that anymore.
I have to say, I want Deron, be honest. You want to get him told. You want to get her told. You want to inflict some pain so they can see what they've inflicted on you. And you got to hold your peace and decide, I'm going to be hip. And hip means I'm just going to watch this play itself out.
Listen, you all, there is so many ways to be shepherded by revenge. Don't you understand? When you fold your arms physically or in the arms of your mind, or tie your legs, decide I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that. Not checking in with God. You know you're doing that to a person. You know you're trying to send a message to the person. Be honest. You ain't got to tell me. You ain't got to tell the wife. You ain't got to tell your husband, not first, or your wife. Go talk to the Spirit so the Spirit can give you the right words to come back with, if words are what you can do at that moment. Because sometimes we so fired up, it's so bottled up inside that even when I breathe smoke, even when I breathe and I look, my eyes say I want to curse you. My disposition, my posture says I curse you, not just my mouth. And when your whole body is saying, don't you see this? I'm trying to tell you, hold your peace. Hold your peace. You are way too far gone. You have already embraced too much chatter. You got to throw some of that chatter off. Deron, you said you have to watch your judgments and suspicions. That's what chatter will tell you to do. All that chatter will start suggesting things that pushes you towards judgment and pushes you towards suspicion. I wanted this, I wanted that. And you find yourself with that language even though we don't catch ourselves.
And you can't take their comments personally. You can't take, because I have to deal with people as if they're being dealt with. And I have to deal with people knowing that they are going through some things. And I've had to, over the last 15 to 20 years, learn to choose not to indulge in their being upset or whatever it is right now. And thank God that we're going to make it through this too as well.
Absolutely. What did Job teach us, you all? That all that Job went through, he didn't sing with his lips. He didn't speak. He didn't create a whole new future and outcome. Are you ready?
No, I'm just showing you.
Okay. A future and outcome with himself. He didn't do that. He didn't do that. He kept quiet. He held his peace when it came to certain things, and that's what we're saying you want to do. So let's look. Let's check this. The important part of doing all of this and holding your peace is that you continue to let yourself be shepherded by peace. You know what? I had another couple of scriptures that I was going to deal with, but I don't think I need to. We'll say those for another time. What's the bottom line here? How are you going to worship in the face of deep pain? This is what we're trying to master our emotions for. So that while we're living in this world that is a broken world, and you got the Labans and accusing you like Jacob being accused, and you got these different things going on, or people close to you who don't get it, don't get that you're making some God choices because they just don't have enough information yet, and you don't have enough information to give them. And even if you gave them to him, Jesus would say to his disciples, you are not even ready to understand what this is all about. But one day you will, because one day after I drink my cup, you will have a cup to drink. And when you're drinking that cup, you want to understand things I could never teach you. I could never teach you. But in the meantime, in between time, hold your peace, trust God, and let's not add more damage, more insult to injury. Amen? God bless you. I'm passing over.
Amen. 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 This message is divine, it's timely, and it's relevant to every person's life who has the ears to hear and the eyes to see. I'll share this with you, family. Peace is a lifestyle of spiritual maturity. Peace is a lifestyle that I embody and that I exemplify no matter what space I'm in, no matter who I'm speaking with. And peace starts with me. Something so amazing about maturity. And for those who had the privilege of raising a teenager and those who have been teenagers, you know how confusing that time was. You remember how challenging it was, how good decisions were on the same cuff as bad decisions, how you ebbed and flowed with your emotions. Well, that's your spirit today. The seasons of your down, the seasons of your lowest points is when God is teaching you the greatest lessons. But the challenge comes, family, is we're so busy focusing on the high points of life and what's next that we don't take the time to grow in the low. We take the time to come rooted underground before we can sprout on the surface. So I've been in this position of when I'm encountering that spirit, I ask myself first and foremost, what spirit is guiding me? Hear that very clearly. Any encounter, any conversation, what spirit is guiding me? Is it God or is it the adversary? Is it light or is it darkness? Because they will be present at the very same time. And you have to choose. You have the power to choose and make peace at that very moment. Peace is not something that I look for externally, but I look internally. And I say, God, help me at this very moment. Real quick example. I had the privilege of going to look at my nephew's new school. He's almost 3 months old. And this bundle of joy God has blessed our family with. And he changed the entire world as soon as he was born for our family. Well, we're looking at the school for my young baby. And the thing that I had to check myself when I came into that space, immediately I was on protective mode. Protective mode in not a good sense, but protective mode in I'm investigating, I'm judging. My inner Sherlock Holmes is coming out at this very moment. What they doing? What's going on here? Why is this out of position? Why is all these different what ifs? And those what ifs were grounded in fear. The fear of what could possibly happen, as opposed to the possibilities of what God can do. So my mom was holding our little bundle of joy Christian. And she came over to me and she looked at me. She said, you want to hold? You want to hold? And I call him buttercream because he's so smooth and small. So she said, you want to hold butter? And as soon as I held him in my hands and he laid on my chest, he was at peace and he started to go to sleep. And immediately God said, are you going to bring positivity in this space for this young baby? Are you going to stop judging everything that's going on here and be present? And I looked around at that place and I said, wow, God, this place is beautiful. This is a place that he can grow in. This is a place that you led us to as a family. And then God showed me something even deeper as I held him close to my heart. God said, are you protecting your soul the same way that you will protect this one right here? Family, are you protecting the innocence that you have inside of you and nurturing it and allowing it to grow the same way you're doing for your child? Are you present with yourself and your God, that when he leads and directs you, that you will move without hesitation? What we do in our low seasons, other words in our valleys, prepares us to withstand the peaks, prepares us for the peaks. But our season of overcoming and our season of the highest state that we will ever manifest to does not happen on the mountaintop. It happens right here. So stop avoiding those hard times. Stop avoiding those whispers that you get and those thoughts and those feelings, but present them to your God in heaven. Let him nurture you and groom you and watch what you'll grow into and manifest, family. Today, I choose peace. Today, you choose peace. Today, we are the peace that God called us to be. So next time you encounter anything in your life, conversation with your family, conversation at your job, conversation with your thoughts, what spirit is guiding me at this moment? And let honesty, truth, and the spirit of God reign in that space at that very moment. Amen. Amen.